Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Darren Cockburn, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Living a Life of Harmony: 7 Guidelines for Cultivating Peace and Kindness. Now, Darren has been practicing meditation and mindfulness for over 20 years, studying with a range of teachers from different religions. As a coach and teacher himself, he has supported hundreds of people in meditation, mindfulness, and finding a connection to spirituality, with a focus on applying spiritual teachings in everyday life to cultivate a peaceful mind. So let's welcome to the show, Darren Cockburn.
Hey, thanks very much for having me on the show. How are you doing? And whereabouts are you located today?
Well, we have people all across the U.S. and the world, actually, that listen to Moments with Marianne. So I understand that you're in the U.K., right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm on the South Coast.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, hey, I'm so glad that you're here with us. We get to talk about your new book, and I hear it's getting great reviews. I mean, people are loving your book.
Oh, that's good news. Good to hear.
Why don't you share with us a little bit about your inspiration about writing this book?
Well, what I was looking to do was produce a list of guidelines that I could follow to help me live my life in a skillful, ethical way. And I'd been following various religions and philosophies in the past, so I'd come across basic guidance on how to live. And what I decided to do was to take what I'd learned from different religions and philosophies and spiritual teachings and take my own experience and synthesize all of that to come up with 7 simple guidelines that could be followed to live a life of harmony, to cultivate peace and kindness. Because I'm a mindfulness teacher and practitioner, and one of the things about mindfulness, one of the really important things that doesn't always come out in the teachings, is that the way we arrange our life situation and the way that we live our lives influences our ability to be mindful and aware and to have a peaceful mind. So I also wanted these guidelines for myself and so I could teach others to help feed into their mindfulness practice.
Was it difficult to decide what went into this book, and maybe there were a few things that you kept out?
Well, it was interesting. The 7 guidelines were quite straightforward to produce. They were quite a spontaneous creation. And hopefully when we talk about them soon, you'll see that when you look down them, they pretty much cover everything in life. So once I produced this list and I looked down it and I reflected on it and I talked to friends and people that I teach about these guidelines, I soon realized that everything was pretty much covered by them. And I like the fact that there's just 7 and they're simple and straightforward, because I find it helpful if I've got a simple list that I can memorize and that I can follow, rather than something that's taken me a long time to recall and to understand. So this list is partly for people that haven't got the time to go deep into religions and philosophies to try and understand all of the detail that they usually offer. Because a lot of the religions and lists from other philosophies, they were written a long time ago. So I wanted to produce a list that's current and accessible today, but contains the essence of all the wonderful spiritual teachings that are available to us that have been produced over the centuries.
Well, why don't you share a couple of those guidelines with us so our listeners get an idea of what some of those are?
Sure, yeah. Well, the first guideline is honor the body, and that's about doing our best to keep the body in good condition on the basis that we've been given the body to use as a vehicle through life and through this big universal process that we're a part of. And it's also about having the right kind of a relationship with the body, having an accepting and kind relationship with the body, regardless of its condition. And that's the first guideline, because really, if we have a good relationship with our body, and if we can keep our body in good condition, that makes it easier then to be able to be mindful and be aware and follow the other guidelines, the other 6 guidelines.
Well, and it would sound like something that's so easy to do, but a lot of times we kind of disregard our body. We kind of forget about it.
Yeah, that's right. And when we do that, we find that it causes a lot of suffering and it causes a lot of stress, because our bodies need to be loved and respected. And when they're not loved and respected, they give us feedback, and that can come in the form of pain within the body and discomfort, or it could come within the form of stress, psychological stress. It's a little bit like if you don't respect and love your friends and family members, that doesn't feel quite right. That creates a stress as well. Or if you don't love other people generally, and so the body's really no exception to that. And it's an essential part of spiritual practice. It's emphasized more in some religions and philosophies than others, but certainly in my own experience, if I can keep the body in good condition, or do my best to, and regardless of what condition it's in, just be kind to my body and accept the way that my body is in the present moment, then I find life's a lot easier. It flows a lot better then.
Well, isn't that the truth, right? So, I mean, when we take care of our bodies, it allows us, it's that vehicle that we get to, be in charge of while we're here as a spirit going through these experiences. Why don't you share one more of the guidelines for us so our listeners get a sense of what the guidelines kind of entail?
Yeah, I'll share the second guideline with you, which I call the king of the guidelines, which is to be present, bringing awareness and acceptance into every moment. So another way of describing this would be mindfulness. And to live a life of harmony, to be at peace, to be skillful, to do the right thing spiritually, and to even establish a connection with spirit, we need to be mindful, we need to be aware. Because the opposite to being mindful is when we're lost in thought. When we're lost in thought, we tend to be unskillful. We tend to do the opposite of what we need to do. And what we're trying to do with the guidelines and spiritual practice in general is be mindful and be aware, because when the mind's in that state, that then allows us to use the connection to what transcends us. So that allows us to connect with spirit, or you could say that allows God to flow through you. That allows you to receive transcendental love and wisdom, and that's your ultimate source of peace. And you need mindfulness to be able to connect with that. You'll never connect with that when you're lost in thought. This is why this guideline is so important. And interestingly, if you follow this guideline and you're present in the moment and you're mindful, you follow all the other guidelines, the other 6 guidelines, automatically, because the wisdom and the skillfulness comes out from a mindful state.
That's really, excuse me, it's very interesting to see how these all dovetail so nicely together. And they make sense when you go through the guidelines. We've gone through a couple of them, but when you go through the rest of them, they all make sense on how that brings together a very fulfilling practice.
Yeah, that's right.
So in your book, you talk about the process, and I'd love for you to explain that and what that means.
Yeah, the process is the infinite process that really covers everyone and everything. So we're all parts of a big process. We're not separate. We often wander around believing that we're separate in our own minds. We often think that it's us and then the rest of the universe. But we're not separate. We're all connected together, and we're all influencing each other. Not just people, but nature and everything that happens. So it's a very vast process that we're a part of. It's very complex. It's infinite. There's no beginning to the process. There's no end to it. And its depth is infinite as well. And the process operates at different levels. So if you take the discussion that we're having at the moment, a process is taking place. Whereas I'm thinking, I'm speaking, you're listening. As you're listening, that might be triggering certain feelings and emotions within you. It might trigger thoughts, bodily sensations. So this is a process that's taking place between the two of us. That's an example of a process. And another process is the process of sharing what we're discussing here. And I know that this is going out live, but it may also be made available for download later. So lots of different people will be listening to what we're talking about here. And when they listen to it, that will get them thinking, and they might decide, I'm interested in this, or I want to change the way that I live in some way. So they might make some changes as a result of listening to the teachings. So they're just a couple of examples. You can see that everything's all connected together and influencing each other. And a simple example that I will often give is going to making a coffee, and that's a process as well. You do a number of things. You put water, you boil your water, you grind your coffee beans if that's how you do it. You leave it a while. You then pour the coffee into a cup, drink the coffee. That's all a process. So the processes operate at different levels. So at a really high level, you could say that the Earth's a process, and it has a beginning, and it's going to be maintained for a while, and then ultimately, like everything, it will be destroyed. We don't know when. And then there are processes that take place down at an atomic level. So even if you look at something that's close to you, like an object, like a chair or a table, that's a process as well, because you can't see it, but all the little atoms in there are moving around and vibrating. And then even within the atoms, there's even smaller processes taking place. So you get into the realm of quantum physics. And the interesting thing about this is that you can just keep going into more and more detail, looking at these more and more detailed processes, which is what scientists do, but you never actually reach the bottom because it's infinite in depth. So this is what I mean by the process, and we're a part of it. You and I are a part of the process. Our minds and our bodies are a part of the process, constantly changing. There's nothing fixed about us. And these guidelines, these 7 guidelines, are there to guide people through the process so you can live in a way that's harmonious with it. Because the process, it likes certain things that human beings do, and it doesn't like other things. So it likes you to be kind. It doesn't like you to cause harm. It likes you to be truthful. It doesn't like for you to tell lies. It likes you to be conscious when you're using your mobile phone and using that with awareness. And it doesn't like it if you don't, and it gives you feedback. So all of these different guidelines apply within the process, and they're a little bit like rules of the game. And if you follow them, you tend to get on much better in life. It flows. And if you do the opposite, it causes stress and suffering. It's that simple.
So does the process really require that we be present?
Yeah, the process, or the intelligence behind the process, and people have different beliefs as to what this intelligence is. But the intelligence behind the process, it prefers us to be present. It prefers for us to be mindful and aware. And when we're present, or when we're mindful, the process then rewards us because we have a peaceful mind and we tend to get on better in life. What the process doesn't like is when we get lost in thought. And when we get lost in thought, the process tries to correct us and put us on the right track by creating suffering or stress, psychological stress. So the process, or the intelligence behind the process, definitely has preferences for how human beings should live and should manage themselves.
So when we talk about that relationship to the guidelines, how do the guidelines in your book differ from, let's say, lists and guidelines that we have from other religions or philosophies?
Well, one of the ways that they differ is that there's a seventh guideline in here, which you won't find in religions or philosophies, or maybe the odd one or two might include it, but I haven't found any that do at the moment. So there's a specific guideline on applying the other guidelines to your digital device usage. So just very quickly, the first 6 guidelines are: honor the body, be mindful, act with kindness, understand the truth, communicating it selectively and skillfully, do only what you need to do, and have only what you need to have. So they're the top 6. And then the 7th guideline is to take those 6 and apply them to your digital device usage. So what these guidelines are doing is they're encouraging people to be spiritual, if you like, or follow spiritual guidance in their digital usage. Because I don't know about you, but for most of us, we're spending more and more time working digitally during the day, either looking at screens or doing work with audio like we're doing now, digital audio. So it's really important that we stay conscious and stay mindful and apply all of these spiritual best practices to our digital device usage.
Well, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because when we look at our digital devices, most people don't even consider spirituality when they're on their phones or tablets or what have you. And since it plays such a huge part in our life, it would have a spiritual component that would apply to that as well.
Yeah, that's right. When you look at your life, there are different realms that you go into. So there's and they overlap. They can run in parallel. You've got the physical realm, which is basically the form, the stuff around you, the physical stuff. That also includes your thoughts and your feelings, bodily sensations, all of that. So there's that, that kind of physical realm. And then there's a digital realm, which you go into when you access your internet-enabled devices. And that in a way is it's different. It's different to the physical realm. And sometimes, like now, you're in 2 realms because you're using the digital realm whilst being within the physical realm. And then the other realm is the dream realm, which is what happens when we get lost in thought, or what happens when we go to sleep at night and we dream. And that's another realm. So ideally, what we want to be doing in the physical realm, the digital realm, and the dream realm is applying these guidelines. You're doing well with spiritual practice and following these guidelines if you start to apply them in your dreams. So you're dreaming and something happens and you think, I've got an opportunity to do something kind and skillful here, or I could do something quite unskillful but pleasurable. What do? You're dreaming. So, but all of these things, they create imprints on the mind and karma. So everything you do in your dream leaves a trace. Now, whether you believe that dream is true or whether it's just a dream doesn't matter. It all adds to your karma. So it's a very advanced part of practice. But hopefully over time, as people become more evolved, they take all of this stuff into the dream realm. So then they're covering all 3: physical realm, digital realm, and dream realm.
Okay, well, you said a lot there that I want to touch on. I think we'll start with the dream. So in your book, you talk about awareness while sleeping, and most people probably are going, is that even a possible thing? And so I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so awareness while sleeping is, some people can describe it as lucid dreaming. And you don't have to be physically asleep at night to do it. Sometimes you could be daydreaming. Have you ever had that before in the day where you might have just been snoozing, or the mind's just kind of wandered off into a dream and it's like you've watched it a little bit? Have you had that before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example of being aware as the dream's taking place. But then what the dream usually does is it pulls you in, and then it's like you go into it. It's like the dream's real. It's like the perfect virtual reality show, because you don't know you're actually dreaming. But when we're aware, we're dreaming, but we know that we're dreaming. And there's awareness around the dream. Just like in the physical realm, and when we go in about our activities during the daytime, it's like now there's awareness there around what we're experiencing. And we don't even know whether this is a dream or not. We can't prove it. You know, when you go to sleep at night and you dream, you don't know that that's a dream. So how do you know that this isn't a dream? And in a way, it doesn't matter. What matters is that there's awareness around it. And then we don't need to get then we don't need to get too caught up in it. So when we're mindful and when we're present and when we're spiritual or connected to spirit, there's an awareness or a presence around our experience, whatever it is, whether it's physical, digital, or dream.
So, and before you mentioned that there can be karma that's attached to that depending on what we choose in a dream. So I'd love for you to talk on that a little bit.
Yeah, so let's take a simple, just trying to take a simple example for you. So have you ever had a dream before where you've done something unskillful? Can you ever remember that?
That's a good way of putting it, but yes.
Would you like to share what it is with me, or shall we just say it's something unskillful for now?
It's something unskillful. We'll just say it that way.
Right, yeah. So you come to that point in your dream where you're just about to do it. Just like it would happen in the day. Sometimes you get to a point and you know it's like a T-junction. You can go left or right. You can take the skillful route or the unskillful route. You have a choice. So what I'm encouraging people in the practice, in their dreams, if they're aware, then they choose the skillful option rather than the unskillful option. And what happens is the more that you practice the guidelines and the more ethical and skillful you become in your waking life, that will then start to drift into your dreams as well. So you'd be more skillful in your dreams. And I don't know whether this has happened to you, but I know if I'm unskillful in my dreams and I get lost in them and then I'm unskillful, I don't feel good when I wake up. It's a little bit like if I've been unskillful of the day. That doesn't feel good either. But when I've done the right thing in my dreams, I feel much better.
Oh yeah.
So you can see that it has a reaction, what we do in our dreams. But this is advanced stuff, taking this stuff into your dream realm, into your dream world is advanced. But ultimately, as our level of awareness and presence increases, then that starts to happen.
Well, it's so interesting because a lot of times when people dive into their dreams, they think, well, there's no repercussions. I don't have a choice. They don't really realize that there's a lot that can be gained there.
Yeah, we're coming up against opportunities all the time in our dreams, but we have to be aware in order to make those choices, or we need to program our minds during the day to be skillful. And then what we create in our dreams and the choices that we take there will be skillful as well. Mm. But I do say to people, dreaming isn't just about what happens overnight. We're in and out of dreams all day. You could even be on an interview like this, but chances are both of us, I don't know, you might be completely aware the whole time, but I know when I'm in interviews like this and when I'm communicating with people, a lot of the time I'm aware, I'm present, I'm mindful, but occasionally my mind drifts. and I get lost in thought and I go into a little dream and then I come back again. And this is what happens during the day. There are these two modes of the mind. So we're either awake and present or we're lost in thought. And we flip-flop between them. So even during the day, we dream. Because whenever we're lost in thought, we're dreaming.
And there you go. Well, it's good.
Can you relate to that?
Oh yeah, because you can make that distinction easily when you put it that way. Because I mean, a lot of people, they daydream, so you get this kind of lost in thought moments all the time, and there's something to be said about being actual present to what's happening, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it,
Yeah. But it's a tough practice. Mindfulness, I've been teaching mindfulness for years. It's very easy to understand. I can explain mindfulness to someone in 2 or 3 minutes, but it's really difficult to practice. And it does depend on you following these guidelines. It's not just about meditating and remembering to be mindful. You have to look after yourself. You need to set your life up in the right way because it's all linked together. Ethics and the way that you live your life and a peaceful mind go hand in hand.
So, this has me wondering, how did these spiritual guidelines impact your life?
Well, they continue to impact my life. I'm always honest in these discussions, or if I'm giving talks or doing training, to say I'm still working with these guidelines. A lot of the time I don't follow them. So I do know, and I'm confident about what needs to be done and how you need to conduct your life to be spiritual and to be skillful. I know that because the wisdom that I've got that's gone into my books has come from that place. It's not come from me being lost in thought and unskillful. So I know what is in this book, and my first book, Being Present, is valid, and it's aligned with what the intelligence behind the process requires of human beings. Practicing it is a challenge, and fortunately, because I teach and I do interviews like this, and I have a mindfulness online spiritual training platform and podcast, I spend a lot of my time with these guidelines. So I'll go about my day-to-day activities, and even when I'm unskillful and I don't follow them, then I talk about them to people like you, and then it reminds me, okay, I need to be practicing those myself. So I'm just constantly being reminded, and I find that really helpful. But it's helped me. I've got a long way to go with these guidelines, just with spiritual practice in general. But what I've found is that my life has got simpler. It's become more spacious. I don't get as anxious as I used to because I struggled a lot with anxiety in the past. My mind's more peaceful. My relationships have improved, and I'm just feeling like I'm in flow more of the time, and also connected to spirit, to God, to the intelligence behind the process, and to my higher self, whatever you want to call it. I'm experiencing that a lot more, and I'm finding that I'm more mindful. So it's definitely making a difference, and it has done for millions of people. This is why religions have had these guidelines. You'll find these guidelines in, not these particular guidelines, but if you go and look in the Bible, you'll find the 10 Commandments. If you go and look in Buddhist texts, you'll find Buddhist precepts, and yoga's got its lists, and you'll find the 10 Commandments in the Quran. Most religions and philosophies have got something like this. What I've tried to do with this list to differentiate it is just make it accessible and applicable today. And I've tried to package as much as I can into this book so people can use it as a manual and as a compass to give them, a more enjoyable life that's aligned with what they need to be doing, whatever that is.
Well, and what's great is these guidelines allow people to determine that themselves. I mean, being kind, not just to yourself, but to those around you, can come in a lot of different forms and shapes. And so when people really start diving into their practice and they're more aware, more present, they're finding that they're kind of living these guidelines just automatically.
That's right. That's the interesting thing, is that when you're, as I mentioned earlier, when you're mindful, when you're present, then skillfulness flows naturally out of that. So if you find someone that's a very mindful, present person and basically check them against the guidelines, which isn't something I necessarily recommend, but if you did that, if you did like a little assessment, you'd find that they were doing quite well with the guidelines. Even if they couldn't recite them, you'd find that they'd be living in that way, or they'd be moving in that direction. This is why there's a link. It's because the mindfulness connects you to the intelligence that sits behind the process. It gives you that transcendental connection. And it's the intelligence that has defined these guidelines. And these guidelines have been valid for thousands of years. They don't change. They're timeless. They're infinite.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's perfect is, this book is great for people regardless where they're on their journey. So it's somebody new to mindfulness and meditation, or someone that's been practicing it for a long time. As someone that's been doing this for a long time, I found your book to be a great resource to kind of just hone in my practice in ways that it had some kind of rough edges.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've had that feedback from people that are just starting out find the book useful, and also people that have been practicing for decades. As they read the book, there are some really good reminders in there and a few extra things that they might not have thought of. So yeah, it is. The book is accessible. I hope it's accessible, to most people that are interested in making their lives more harmonious and making their minds more peaceful. And I think pretty much all of us want more of that. It makes sense.
Without a doubt. Well, and Darren, my goodness, we can talk for hours on just this topic, but we're at the end of our time here. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
So the best place to go is my website, which is Mindfulness Online Training. That's all one word, mindfulnessonlinetraining.org. And on there, you will find coming up to 100 different resources, which are mainly audio podcasts and also video and articles, which cover off a lot of this stuff. And there's links on the site out to the usual social media channels. And if people have a podcast app on their phone, on their mobile device, and if you do a search for Mindfulness Online Training, you can subscribe to my podcast that way. And there's content going on there once or twice a week. I've also been nominated for the Emerging Voices Award by Mind, Body, Spirit magazine, which is the UK's leading Mind, Body, Spirit publication, and it's part of Watkins Books. So if people do like my work, they like what they've heard, I really appreciate a vote. I think voting concludes at the end of this month, at the end of June. So yeah, that would be really helpful, because that will help me spread the teachings more and reach more people if people would like to do that.
Well, I voted for you. I suggest our listeners get on there as well and do the same. I know they can go to your website and there are links for that and just everything else. My goodness, Darren, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been good talking with you. Yeah, take care.
Well, thank you, Darren. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you. And of course, to talk about your new book, Living a Life of Harmony, 7 Guidelines for Cultivating Peace and Kindness. Again, Darren's book is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. You can connect with Darren at darrencockburn.com for more information about his work and his coaching. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.